Our second presentation will be from Alex Peters. Alex is currently healthcare consultant at RFID Discovery, but is speaking to us about his previous experience at University Hospitals Plymouth NHS Trust. Alex began his career in 2018 in Plymouth as a clinical engineering technician. His technological ability, eye for detail, and knowledge of global standards earned him the role of medical device asset register developer in 2020. Alex played a vital role in implementing the largest GS1-compliant RFID system in the NHS, tracking over 50,000 assets. The project has been awarded Best Global Implementation in Healthcare in 2022 by RFID Journal. Alex now uses his first-hand experience and knowledge to help other healthcare organizations benefit from their own RFID installations.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks everyone for watching. It's a privilege to be here with Medstrom, one of our partners. So, as we covered at the start, my name is Alex Peters. I'm one of the healthcare consultants for RFID Discovery, a partner of Medstrom. But before I did that, I was a customer of Discovery at University Hospitals Plymouth NHS Trust. And the role that really I'll be focusing on and given my experience here is the medical device asset register developer. So having come from a clinical engineering background, clinical engineering services probably get overlooked quite a lot in terms of the impact they have in an entire trust with the work they do on medical devices, servicing and maintenance, and really having an impact in every ward and every department. And so that role of developing the asset register was all about taking the assets and improving the service we deliver with them, whether that's the maintenance, having spare parts ready, making them more available and reliable to promote better diagnosis, treatment, recovery, and ultimately patient safety. So one key aspect of that was we looked at RFID as a potential avenue of improving the way we manage our assets. And in terms of the trust itself, it is the largest in the Southwest Peninsula. We care for just under 500,000 people in our catchment population. We have 7,000 staff volunteers, over 1,000 beds, and 40,000 medical devices that we are working with. The scope of the building and infrastructure itself, it's actually quite an isolated individual site. Most of the facilities and services are all contained within one building. It's a typical sort of 1980s build with a central tower block that has been expanded upon on different sites ever since. So some trusts will vary, they'll have multiple scattered sites, but we were quite lucky in the sense that we did have one individual one. So the main challenges we were facing as part of a wider trust, and the way that clinical engineering had an impact of that, was that we knew clinical staff would spend hours searching for devices. We knew that internally and from external reports as well, and surveys that had been done with nursing teams across England and the UK. Engineers would also struggle, so it wasn't just clinically, but when it came time for servicing and maintenance, that could also be a struggle for the engineers who need to reach those devices to perform that work. Additionally, devices could be stolen by patients or family members, or even without intention, they could just be lost out in the community when they go to care homes and patient homes as well. And all of this would create a cycle, which I'm sure many trusts are familiar with, where because of the lack of equipment or availability of equipment, clinical staff would be hesitant to return, especially medical equipment library devices, in fear of not being able to get it back when they need it for future use. So they would start to hoard and hide stuff, which again makes that equipment even worse. So what a lot of trusts will do in that case when they need more equipment is they'll hire it in. But of course, that then goes out into the world of the trust and it becomes lost or stolen as well. And then you get fees and late return costs for the hire equipment. So it all sort of contributes to each other. So it all came about as we were actually one of the 6 demonstrator sites that Tamsin mentioned as part of Scan for Safety. So we wanted to basically improve the accuracy and integrity of our medical device database initially. That was the main goal. And we knew that if we had a good database with integrity, that we'd be able to improve device availability and reliability by knowing where equipment is and the flow and how long it's in use for and the basic movement of it around the trust. We'd be able to hopefully reduce time spent by clinical staff looking for devices, make it more readily available. And also for the clinical engineering staff, when they need to get access for that maintenance as well, they'd know where the asset is ahead of time. That would all improve compliance rates of maintenance, of equipment maintenance. It would be less likely to fail prematurely and all of the associated costs and downtime that comes with that. And overall, we'd improve our data to support further planning and reporting around maintenance and availability of devices. So in terms of RFID, it was deployed around 5 years ago, and it was a fully passive system. So that means there are no active tags, no batteries, no GPS. It's all basically batteryless paper or plastic tags that are attached to assets, and then they are energized by an external ultra-high frequency wavelength as they go through different detection points or have mobile scanners in the area. So we mentioned 40,000 medical devices was tagged with 70,000 labels and tags. We had different configurations, different sizes and shapes and materials for different assets. And they were tracked by, at the start, 350 antennae which were deployed around the hospital. In addition to that, we had 10 handhelds and 2 trolleys, which would allow staff to go into areas remotely and perform regular audits or search for devices when needed. Just expanding on the labeling in a bit more detail. So the standard labels look like any traditional one you'd get, where you have an equipment number, potentially a serial number, and just some contact details or identification details of the trust. Being GS1 and being part of that global individual asset identification scheme, every asset would have a unique number that references what trust it belongs to and also what department. So we could differentiate not just between trusts, but also, for example, between IT equipment and medical devices. In terms of what that actually looked like, you can see a few examples where we've got a range of different label sizes on different products there. And there was a bit of initial deployment that takes some time, where you need to be considerate of, if you've got 40,000 assets, you need to find them initially. But that's something we put a lot of work and research into to make sure we optimize that and put some good resilience into our labeling to improve read range and make it future-proofed as good as we can. In terms of the deployment plan as well, there were some sort of servers and IT requirements that needed to be built. So whilst we were doing the labeling, that was all built in the background, along with all of the other project management elements. But basically, it's very, very simple in terms of how it works. You have your tags, which are detected by readers, or antennas, which are connected to readers. That gets pushed through to the Discovery, which is the RFID web interface. And there are some integrations to integrate between the RFID system and your existing medical asset management system. So what it then means is, as you're going around searching for devices or devices are detected, if there are any alerts or outstanding maintenance that is existing on the parent database, that can be pushed through, and you can start to set up things like the email alerts and notices and recalls that need to go out for specific devices. So I mentioned that our site was one large site, predominantly in one location in a tower block. And so we used that to our advantage to map out the antennas basically at every key junction and corridor and entrances to wards and departments. So every green dot you see here on this map is an RFID antenna. And what that allowed us to do was automate the detection of assets as much as possible. So as it moves from one area to another, we can get full location history as it moves through the corridors, and then we get a lasting location as it enters its final destination. If it then comes out of that to go on to another area, we'd see that go back on the system again. In between that, you can also do mobile scans at any time with your handheld or trolley devices to do audits of those individual areas. And the antennas themselves, very discrete, low profile bits of hardware. Most people would just assume it's a Wi-Fi antenna. So there are some considerations and challenges to be aware of. Devices do have metal cases and built-in RF shielding to protect the internal components. Obviously, if you have built-in RF shielding, that's not great for RF tags, but there are ways you can get around that. So we'd think about some different tags that enable the chip and the antenna just to be lifted away from the surface. With deployment of a system like this, you do need to think about areas that you don't have access to 9 to 5, like operating theatres, where we know how busy the schedules are at the moment. And in our case, if you've got a lot of fixed infrastructure going in place, then you need to make sure that the antenna layout and the design and the install is being done per specification. First, it was a 2-year project initially, and it's still ongoing. But that does mean you just need to have some awareness of the hardware that is delivered, potentially with different versions or firmware. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of testing and naming conventions that need to be agreed trust-wide with things like your location trees. And that expands into the training and awareness that you roll out for the trust as a whole. Just to give you a bit of information about the labeling as well. So it probably seems like a very simple thing. Just go out, take the old tag label off and place a new one on. But something like that does need consideration as well. And this is something we became very good at, was going into the fine detail and establishing processes to make sure that we really optimize the rollout that we do. So just something very simple like relabeling. We'd have this full list of everything we go out with, and basically work from the bottom of the hospital and work our way up one award at a time to make sure we cover as many assets as possible. And just as a quick example of that process as well. So again, it's not just as simple as removing the old label and putting a new one on. We do a lot of validation where we would test the positioning. We'd record the images of the optimum position. And that means as additional devices of the same model come through the workshops or the libraries, if we need to relabel it, we can check a referenced recorded position for the best label type and position and so on, and validate that and test it and make sure it's all good before it goes back out into the trust. And in terms of generating awareness and rollout, we did a lot of materials to really raise the profile of the system and make sure that when it does get rolled out, that everyone that wants access to it can have access and knows how to use the system and what benefits they can get out of that. So that's simple things like just doing some trial areas to begin with and getting some initial feedback to fine tune how the system is set up. If you have internal staff emails, daily newsletters, social media accounts, things like that, we utilized everything we could there. And even an internal e-learning platform to show users how to access it and how to navigate the basic pages and menus. And so what it came down to was the cost-saving possibilities. That's always, of course, what the boards look at. And for us, there were a few obvious aspects. So things like auditing costs, rather than sending guys around manually, that could be done now instantly in real time. And you can tag, or you can read 1,000 tags a second with a mobile device. So that was really sped up and saved a lot of money there. In terms of rolling replacement programs, we obviously hope that by having more devices available, knowing where they are, improving reliability and performance, that we'll spend less money in devices being lost, disposed, or replaced. Things like patient discharges. If you have more assets available for the diagnosis, treatment, and recovery process, we know that from estimates that if you can get the average inpatient stay duration down by just 1 hour per patient, then the amount of hours and the time and money that's invested in that can be freed up as well for more patient care. There's a big one there at the bottom, which is clinical staff looking for devices. We know again from those surveys that nurses typically spend 30 minutes to 60 minutes per shift looking for assets. So that's a number which, when you calculate by the number of nurses you have and potentially the number of shifts, you can get an idea of roughly how many clinical hours and the cost that goes into the wages for those hours are being wasted or not focused on patient care. So there's a little asterisk there because it's not necessarily money that you'll get back in cash to spend somewhere else, but it is a tangible benefit that you'll get that saving in the hours that are being committed to patient care or lost. A few more benefits there as well. Things like our audits, we know they're now 95% quicker and live, like I mentioned. With a system like this, there's no reason why your compliance rates, especially for high-risk devices, can't go from anywhere around 40%, which we might have had in our case initially. There's no reason why they can't be 100% if you know where they all are and you have good integrity in your asset database. In terms of external servicing, repair contracts, your CQC compliance, MHRA as well, that all improves your performance and attractiveness in terms of those ratings. And like I mentioned earlier, the data that you get for various reporting is incredible with a system like this, and overall just improves your staff confidence in device availability and reliability, and that ultimately all relates to improved patient safety. So it was a system that I was really proud to work on. I was working at the Trust, and I'm still proud of today. Even after our initial deployment, it started to gain a lot of recognition case studies. We didn't realize it at the time, but it turned out we were the largest GS1-compliant one in the UK NHS. And it sort of accumulated really in the award that Tom mentioned, that we were awarded the best global deployment in healthcare in 2022. But that was just the start of it, even a couple of years ago. And the Trust, even as an existing customer of Discovery now, is continuing to expand. So they're looking at or they do now track STU, which is their sterilization and disinfection unit. They now track the operating kits that come between the sterilization department and the theatres to track those instruments and components. They've integrated the IT equipment database and are starting to label and track IT equipment as well. And the Trust is currently looking at other solutions such as patient discharge, patient tracking, like Tamsin mentioned, and even potentially active tracking, which is where you do have battery powered tags and you start to get real-time locations on a map. In terms of hardware, they continue to roll out the antennas through the corridors and the infrastructure as well. So with a new ED, maternity theatres, oncology orthopedics, and a new Royal Eye Infirmary. And the use cases expand even further as well, beyond just asset tracking. So we do things like temperature monitoring, stock and spare parts, smart trolleys, research trolleys, sepsis carts, baby tagging as well. Again, Tamsin mentioned, even things like the wayfinding. So using that same infrastructure, whether it's passive or BLE, staff can even utilize that to navigate to their appointments or their friends and family as well. So yeah, that's me. Thank you for letting me give you that introduction to our experience. Just a very quick summary. Again, if you have any questions about our experience at Plymouth or for RFID in general, then we'd be happy to support that at the end of the call or later on separately. Thank you.